The extended lines of relation meet in the eternal thou. Every particular thou is a glimpse through to the eternal thou. By means of every particular thou, the primary word addresses the eternal thou. Through this mediation of the thou of all beings' fulfillment and non-fulfillment of relations come to them. The inborn thou is realized in each relation and consummated in none. It is consummated only in the direct relation with the thou that by its nature cannot become it. There is no illusory world, there is only the world, which appears to us as twofold in accordance with our twofold attitude. Only the barrier of separation has to be destroyed. Further, no going beyond sense experience is necessary, for every experience, even the most spiritual, could yield us only in it. Nor is any recourse necessary to a world of ideas and values, for they cannot become presentness for us. None of these things is necessary. Can it be said what really is necessary? Not in the sense of a precept. For everything that has ever been devised and contrived in the time of human spirit as precept, alleged preparation, practice, or meditation has nothing to do with the primal, simple fact of the meeting. Whatever the advantages and knowledge of the wielding of power, for which we have to think this or that practice, none of this affects the meeting of which we are speaking. It all has its place in the world of it, and does not lead one step, does not take the step out of it. Every real relation with a being or life in the world is exclusive. Its thou is free, it steps forth, is single and confronts you. It fills the heavens. This does not mean that nothing else exists, but all else lives in its light. In the relation with God, unconditional exclusiveness and unconditional inclusiveness are one. He who enters on the absolute relation is concerned with nothing isolated anymore. Neither things nor beings, neither earth nor heaven. But everything is gathered up in the relation. For to step into pure relation is not to disregard everything, but to see everything in the thou. Not to renounce the world, but to establish it on its true basis. To look away from the world or to stare at it does not help a man to reach God. But he who sees the world in him stands in his presence. Here world, there God is the language of it. God in the world is another language of it. But to eliminate or leave behind nothing at all, to include the whole world in the thou, to give the world its due and its truth, to include nothing beside God, but everything in him, this is full and complete relation. Men do not find God if they stay in the world. They do not find him if they leave the world. He who goes out with his whole being to meet his thou, and carries to it all being that is in the world, finds him who cannot be sought. Of course God is the wholly other, but he is also the wholly same, the wholly present. Of course he is the mysterium tremendum that appears and overthrows. But he is also the mystery of the self-evident, nearer to me than my eye. There is no such thing as seeking God, for there is nothing in which he could not be found. Every relational event is a stage that affords him a glimpse into the consummating event. Waiting, not seeking, he goes his way. Hence he is composed before all things, and makes contact with them, which helps them. It is a finding without seeking, a discovering of the primal of origin, his sense of thou which cannot be satiated, till he finds the endless thou. God cannot be inferred in anything, in nature, say, as its author, or in history, as its master, or in the subject as the self that is thought in it. Something else is not given, and God then elicited from it. But God is the being that is directly, most nearly and lastingly over against us, that may properly only be addressed, not expressed. You know always in your heart that you need God more than everything, but do you not know, too, that God needs you, in the fullness of his eternity, needs you? In our hearts that there is a becoming of the God that is. The world is not divine sport, it is divine destiny. There is divine meaning in the life of the world, of man, of human persons, of you and me. Two great servants pace through the ages, prayer and sacrifice. The man who prays pours himself out in unrestrained dependence and knows that he has, in an incomprehensible way, an effect upon God, even though he obtains nothing from God. For when he no longer desires anything for himself, he sees the flame of his effect burning at its highest. And the man who makes sacrifice, I cannot despise him. This upright servant of former times who believes that God yearned for the scent of his burnt offering. In a foolish but powerful way, he knew that we can and ought to give to God. This is known by him too, who offers up his little will to God, and meets him in the grand will. Thy will be done, he says, and says no more, but truth adds for him, through me whom thou needest. What distinguishes sacrifice and prayer from all magic? Magic desires to obtain its effects without entering into relation, and practices its tricks before the void. But sacrifice and prayer are set before the face, in the consummation of the holy primary word that means mutual action. They speak the thou, and then they hear. To wish to understand pure relation as dependence is to wish to empty one of the bearers of the relation, and hence the relation itself, of reality. The one is the soul's becoming a unity, that is something that takes place not between man and God, but in man. Power is concentrated, everything that tries to divert it is drawn into the orbit of its mastery. The being is alone in itself and rejoices, as Paracelsus says, in its exaltation. This is the decisive moment for a man. Without it, he is unfit for the work of the Spirit. With it, he decides in his innermost being if this means a breathing space or the sufficient end of his way. Concentrated in unity, he can go out to the meeting to which he has only now drawn quite close, with the mystery, with salvation. But he can also enjoy to the full this blessed concentration of his being, and without entering on the supreme duty, fall back into dissipation of being. Everything on our way involves decision, purposive, dimly seen, wholly mysterious. This in the innermost being is the primal mysterious decision, carrying the mightiest consequences for our destiny. Union that was no union. As illustration, I take the men who in the passion of the engrossing eros are so enraptured by the miracle of the embrace that their knowledge of I and thou perishes in the feeling of a unity that does not and cannot exist. What the ecstatic man calls union is the enrapturing dynamic of relation, not a unity arisen in this moment of the world's time that dissolves the I and the thou, but the dynamic of relation itself, which can put itself before its bearers as they steadily confront one another and cover each from the feeling of the other enraptured one. Here then, on the brink, the relational act goes beyond itself. The relation itself, in its vital unity, is felt so forcibly that its parts seem to fade before it. And in the force of its life, the I and the thou between which it is established are forgotten. Here is one of the phenomena of the brink to which reality extends, and at which it grows dim. But we with holy care wish to foster the holy good of our reality that is gifted to us for this, and perhaps for no other life that is nearer truth. In lived reality, there is no unity of being. Reality exists only in effective action, its power and depth. In power and depth of effective action, inner reality, too, exists only if there is mutual action. The most powerful and the deepest reality exists where everything enters into the effective action, without reserve, the whole man and God, the all-embracing, the united I, and the boundless Thou. The united I, for in lived reality there is the becoming one of the soul, the concentration of power, the decisive moment for a man. But this does not involve, like that absorption, disregard of the real person. Absorption wishes to preserve only the pure, the real, the lasting, and to cast away everything else. But in this concentration, the instinctive is not thought too impure. The sensuous is not thought too remote from its course. What is concerned with emotion is not thought too fleeting. Everything must be gathered into the orbit of its mastery. This concentration does not desire the self that is set apart, but the whole unimpaired man. It aims at and is reality. The doctrine of absorption demands and promises refuge in the one thinking essence, that by which this world is thought, refuge in pure subject. But in lived reality there is not something thinking without something thought. Rather is the thinking no less dependent on the thing thought than the latter on the former. A subject deprived of its object is deprived of its reality. The primal condition of salvation is undivided confrontation of the undivided mystery. It is certain that the Buddha is of those who have known this. Like all true teachers, he does not wish to impart an opinion, but to teach the way. He ventures only one assertion, which is decisive. There is, O monks, an unborn, neither become nor created nor formed. If there were not this, there would be no goal. There is this. The way has a goal. All doctrine of absorption is based on the colossal illusion of the human spirit that is bent back on itself. That spirit exists in man. Actually, spirit exists with man as starting point, between man and that which is not man. Only he who believes in the world is given power to enter into dealings with it. And if he gives himself to this, he cannot remain godless. If only we love the real world, that will not let itself be extinguished, really in its horror. If only we venture to surround it with the arms of our spirit, our hands will meet the hands which held it fast. I know nothing of a world and a life in the world that might separate a man from God. He who truly goes out to meet the world goes out also to God. God comprises but is not the universe. So too, God comprises but is not myself. So much can never break through the crust of the condition of things, O fragment of mica, looking on which I once learned for the first time that I is not something in me. With you I was nevertheless only bound up in myself. At that time the event took place only in me, not between me and you. But when one that is alive rises out of things and becomes a being in relation to me, joined to me by its nearness and its speech, for how inevitably short a time, it is nothing to me but thou. It is not the relation that necessarily grows feeble, but the actuality of its immediacy. Love itself cannot persist in the immediacy of relation. Love endures but in the interchange of actual and potential being. Every thou in the world is enjoined by its nature to become a thing for us, or at all events to continually re-enter the condition of things. Only in one all-embracing relation is potential still actual being. Only one thou never ceases by its nature to be thou for us. He who knows God knows also very well remoteness from God, and the anguish of barrenness in the tormented heart. But he does not know the absence of God. It is we only who are not always there. Every real relation in the world is exclusive. The other breaks in on it and avenges its exclusion. Only in the relation with God are unconditioned exclusiveness and unconditioned inclusiveness one and the same, in which the whole universe is implied. Every real relation in the world rests on individuation. This is its joy, for only in this way is mutual knowledge of different beings one, and its limitation. For in this way perfect knowledge and being known are foregone. Every real relation in the world is consummated in the interchange of actual and potential being. Every isolated thou is bound to enter the chrysalis state of the it, in order to take wings anew. But in pure relation, potential being is simply actual being, as it draws breath, and in it the thou remains present. By its nature, the eternal thou is eternally thou. Only our nature compels us to draw it into the world and the talk of it. The world of it is set in the context of space and time. The world of thou is not set in the context of either of these. Its context is in the center, where the extended lines of relation meet, in the eternal thou. This double movement of estrangement from the primal source, in virtue of which the universe is sustained in the process of becoming, and of turning towards the primal source, in virtue of which the universe is released in being, may be perceived as the metacosmical primal form that dwells in the world as a whole in its relation to that which is, not the world. Form whose twofold nature is represented among men by the twofold nature of their attitudes, their primary words, and their aspects of the world. Both parts of this movement develop, fraught with destiny in time, and are compassed by grace in the timeless creation that is, incomprehensibly, at once emancipation and preservation, release and binding. Our knowledge of twofold nature is silent before the paradox of the primal unity. The spheres in which the world of relation is built are three. First, our life with nature, in which the relation clings to the threshold of speech. Second, our life with men, in which the relation takes on the form of speech. Third, our relation with spiritual beings, where the relation, being without speech, yet begets it. Through every sphere shines the one present. From our life with nature we can lift out the physical world, the world of consistency. From our life with men, the psychical world, the world of sensibility, and from our life with spiritual beings, the noetic world, the world of validity. For actually there is a cosmos for man only when the universe becomes his home, with its holy hearth whereon he offers sacrifice. There is eros for man only when beings become for him pictures of the eternal, and community is revealed along with them. And there is logos for man only when he addresses the mystery with work, and the service for the spirit. Form's silent asking, man's loving speech, the mute proclamation of the creature, are all gates leading into the presence of the Word. But when the full and complete meeting is to take place, the gates are united in one gateway of real life, and you no longer know through which you have entered. Only here, in our lives with men, does the primary word go backwards and forwards in the same form. The word of address and the word of response live in the one language. I and thou take their stand not merely in relation, but also in the solid give and take of talk. The moments of relation are here, and only here, bound together by means of the element of the speech in which they are immersed. Here what confronts us has blossomed into the full reality of the thou. Here alone, then, as reality that cannot be lost, are gazing and being gazed upon, knowing and being known, loving and being loved. This is the main portal into whose opening the two side gates lead, and in which they are included. The relation with man is the real simile of the relation with God. In it true address receives true response, except that in God's response everything, the universe, is made manifest as language. But is not solitude too a gate? Is there not at times disclosed in stillest loneliness an unsuspected perception? Come, lonely one, to him who is alone, cries Simeon, the new theologian, to his God. There are two kinds of solitude according to that from which they have turned. If we call it solitude to free oneself from intercourse of experiencing and using of things, then that is always necessary in order that the active relation, and not that of the supreme relation only, may be reached. But if solitude means absence of relation, then he who has been forsaken by the beings to which he spoke, the true thou, will be raised up by God, but not he who himself forsook the beings. And he alone who is so bound is ready for God, for he alone confronts the reality of God with the human reality. Further, there are two kinds of solitude according to that towards which they have turned. If solitude is the place of purification, necessary even to the man who is bound in relation, both before he enters the Holy of Holies, and in the midst of his ventures between unavoidable failing and the ascent to proving true, to this solitude we are by nature disposed. But if solitude is the stronghold of isolation, where a man conducts a dialogue with himself, not in order to test and master himself, for that awaits him, but in the enjoyment of the confirmation of his soul, then we have the real fall of the spirit into spirituality. The man can advance to the last abyss, where in his self-delusion he imagines he has God in himself, and is speaking with him, But truly, though God surrounds us and dwells in us, we never have him in us, and we speak with him only when speech dies within us. He who loves a woman and brings her life to present realization in his is able to look in the thou of her eyes into a beam of the eternal thou. He who has been converted by this substitution of object now holds a phantom that he calls God. But God, the eternal presence, does not permit himself to be held. Woe to the man so possessed that he thinks he possesses God. The religious man has emerged from that tension into the tension between the world and God. There the command reigns that the unrest of responsibility and of demands on oneself be removed. There is no willing of one's own, but only the being joined into what is ordained. Every ought vanishes in unconditioned being, and the world, though still existing, no longer counts. For in it the religious man has to perform his particular duties, but as it were without obligation, beneath the aspect of the nothingness of all action. But that is to suppose that God has created his world as an illusion, and man for frenzied being. He who approaches the face has indeed surpassed duty and obligation, but not because he is now remote from the world, rather because he has truly drawn closer to it. Duty and obligation are rendered only to the stranger we are drawn to and full of love for the intimate person. The world, lit by eternity, becomes fully present to him who approaches the face and the being of beings. He can in a single response say thou. Then there is no more tension between the world and God, but only the one reality. The man is not freed from responsibility. He's exchanged the torment of the finite pursuit of effects for the motive power of the infinite. He has got the mighty responsibility of love for the whole untraceable world event, for the profound belonging to the world before the face of God. He has, to be sure, abolished moral judgments forever. The evil man is simply one who is commended to him for greater responsibility, one more needy of love, but he will have to practice, till death itself, decision in the depths of spontaneity, unruffled decision, made ever anew. To right action, then action is not empty but purposive, enjoined, needed part of creation. But this action is no longer imposed upon the world. It grows on it as if it were non-action. The moment of meeting is not an experience that stirs in the receptive soul and grows to perfect blessedness. Rather, in that moment, something happens to the man. At times, it is like a light breath, at times like a wrestling bout, but always it happens. The man who emerges from the act of pure relation that so involves his being has now in his being something more that has grown in him, of which he did not know before, and whose origin he is not rightly able to indicate. In the language of the Bible, those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. In the language of Nietzsche, who in his account remains loyal to reality, we take and do not ask who it is there that gives. Man receives, and he receives not a specific content, but a presence. A presence as power, meaning is assured. What does the revealed and concealed meaning purpose with us, desire from us? It does not wish to be explained, nor are we able to do that, but only to be done by us. This meaning is not that of another life, but that of this life of ours, not one of a world yonder, but that of this world of ours, and it desires its confirmation in this life and in relation with this world. This meaning can be received but not experienced. It cannot be experienced, but it can be done, and this is its purpose with us. As no prescription can lead us to the meeting, so none leads from it. As only acceptance of the presence is necessary for the approach to the meeting, so in a new sense is it so when we emerge from it. We have come near to God, but not nearer to unveiling being or solving its riddle. We have felt release, but not discovered a solution. This is the eternal revelation that is present here and now. I know of no revelation and believe in none whose primal phenomenon is not precisely this. I do not believe in a self-naming of God, a self-definition of God before men. The word of revelation is I am that I am. That which reveals is that which reveals. That which is, and nothing more. The eternal source of strength streams. The eternal contact persists. The eternal voice sounds forth, and nothing more. Man can do justice to the relation with God in which he has come to share, only if he realizes God anew in the world according to his strength, and to the measure of each day. In this lies the only authentic assurance of continuity. The various ages of history, however, show a qualitative difference. There is a time of maturing, when the true element of the human spirit, suppressed and buried, comes to hidden readiness so urgent and so tense that it awaits only a touch from him who touches in order to burst forth. The revelation that then makes its appearance seizes in the totality of its constitution the whole elemental stuff that is thus prepared, melts it down, and produces in it a form that is a new form of God in the world. Thus, in the course of history, in the transforming of elemental human stuff, ever new provinces of the world and the spirit are raised to form, summoned to divine form. Ever new spheres become regions of a theophany. It is not man's own power that works here, nor is it God's pure effective passage, but it is a mixture of the divine and the human. The spirit responds also through a look that is formative. Although we earthly beings never look at God without the world, but only look at the world in God, yet as we look, the shape eternally, the form of God. Form is also a mixture of thou and it. In belief and in occult form can harden into an object, but in virtue of the essential quality of relation that lives on in it continually becomes present again. God is near his form so long as man does not remove them from him. Man must come out of the false security into the venture of the infinite, out of the community that is now overarched only by the temple dome, and not also by the firmament, into the final solitude. Subjectivism empties God of soul. Objectivism makes him into an object. God is near his forms if man does not remove them from him. But when the expanding movement of religion suppresses the movement of turning and removes the form from God, the countenance of the form is obliterated. Its lips are dead, its hands hang down, God knows it no more, and the universal dwelling place that is built about its altar, the spiritually apprehended cosmos, tumbles in, and the fact that man, in the disturbance of his truth, no longer sees what is then taking place, is a part of what has then taken place. Disintegration of the Word has taken place. The Word has its essence in revelation, its effect in the life of a form, its currency during the domination of the form that has died. The The times in which the living word appears are those in which the solidarity of connection between I and the world is renewed. The times in which the effective word reigns are those in which the agreement between I and the world are maintained. The times in which the word becomes current are those in which alienation between I and the world, loss of reality, growth of fate, is completed, till there comes the great shudder, the holding of the breath in the dark, and the preparing silence. But this course is not circular, it is the way. In each new aeon, fate becomes more oppressive, turning more shattering, and the theophany becomes ever nearer, increasingly near to the sphere that lies between beings, to the kingdom that is hidden in our midst, there between us. History is a mysterious approach. Every spiral of its way leads us both into profounder preservation and more fundamental turning. But the event that from the side of the world is called turning is called from God's side redemption.